Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, At Home with Willowberry. Or if you're new, welcome. But where have you been? I'm so happy to see you here. My name is Valerie, and in today's video, how about joining me for a day of baking and cooking here at my 50-year-old mobile home up in the Virginia mountains. I'm going to make a cheesecake for the very first time, and then I plan to make creamy chicken orzo with fresh baked bread for dinner. It was a very productive day, so if you're interested, then I hope you'll stick around and enjoy the video. How are you all doing today? I sure hope you're having a great day wherever you're watching from. We're doing real good, just enjoying the last days of summer from our little homestead here in the Virginia mountains. I start my day every morning by bringing the chickens a special treat and collecting the eggs. Today I collected 3 eggs. The most we're collecting on a daily basis has been between 3 and 4 eggs. They're still pretty tiny, but I can tell they're starting to get a bit bigger each day. Today I brought the chickens some broccoli and strawberries, and they're loving it. Well y'all, as soon as I finish checking on the chickens, I'm going to head back up to the house and get started on making my first ever cheesecake. I don't know how or why, but somehow I ended up with 6 blocks of cream cheese that I need to use up, so I figured the best way to do that would be to bake a cheesecake. Well, I've never baked a cheesecake before, so today's going to be a new experience for me. I found a recipe on Sugar Spun Run that I'll be following, and I'll make sure to link it down below just in case you want to give it a try. According to the recipe, I'll be making a graham cracker crust, and to do that, I need to crush up 1½ cups of graham crackers. Once I crush the crackers up, I'll then melt some butter and combine it with the graham crackers along with some white sugar and brown sugar. I'll then pour the crumbs into a 9-inch springform pan and press them into the bottom and up the sides of the pan to form the crust. Well, y'all, the crust was a little tricky to form, but I think I managed to make it work. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Now it's time to make the cheesecake. For the cheesecake filling, I'll add 32 ounces of cream cheese to the stand mixer and stir it until it's smooth and creamy. To the cream cheese, I'll add sugar, sour cream, vanilla extract, salt, and eggs. The recipe calls for 4 large eggs, but since our chicken eggs are so little, I'll be adding 6 eggs instead. Alright, well, let's make the filling. Once I finish making the cheesecake filling, I'll then pour it into the prepared springform pan with the graham cracker crust. It will bake in a 325-degree oven for approximately 1 hour. Alright, well, let's get this cheesecake ready for the oven. Now that the cheesecake is in the oven, I want to go ahead and prepare some bread dough. I'm going to make 2 loaves of artisan bread for dinner tonight. My boys love fresh baked bread, so I thought I'd surprise them with some for when they get home from school today. I found a simple and easy recipe for artisan bread also on Sugar Spun Run. According to this recipe, the bread has great flavor and texture and is incredibly simple to make. Alright, well let's make some bread dough. Well, y'all, I'm going to leave the bread dough to rise for 2 to 3 hours, or at least until it has doubled in size. In the meantime, I'm going to make some fruit compote to go with the cheesecake. Fruit compote is a sweet, chunky fruit sauce made by simmering whole or chopped fruit in a sugar syrup. Today I'll be using frozen berries to make the compote. It has strawberries, blueberries, and cherries, which I think will be very delicious to go with the cheesecake. I'm going to let the fruit compote simmer on the stove for a few minutes to give it time to thicken up. In the meantime, I guess I'll go ahead and wash a few dishes. I find it's easier to keep up with the dirty dishes if I wash a few smaller loads throughout the day. I can smell the cheesecake baking in the oven, and it smells heavenly. As soon as I finish washing the dishes, it will be time to pull it out of the oven. Well, y'all, it has been a very productive morning so far. I checked on my chickens, and I made my very first cheesecake and a fruit compote. I prepared bread dough to go with our dinner tonight, and I even found time to wash a few dishes. I need to let the cheesecake cool down a bit, and then I'll place it in the fridge to cool down even more. I'm hoping it will be cooled down enough so that we can enjoy it after dinner tonight. I have a couple of hours to pass by while I wait for the dough to rise, so I figured I'd come hang out on the front porch for a while. I'm going to clean up the table, and then I'm going to sit a bit and enjoy the mountain view. The weatherman is calling for a rainstorm later this afternoon, but right now the sun is shining bright, so I better take a few minutes to enjoy the view while I can. Well, y'all, break time is over. It's time to bake some bread. According to the recipe, once the dough is risen, I'll need to scrape the dough out onto a generously floured surface and form it into a ball. I'll need to stretch and fold the dough a few times before forming the dough into a ball again. I'll allow the dough to rest for another 30 minutes. As it rests, I'll preheat a Dutch oven in a 450-degree oven. Don't worry, I'll leave the recipe linked down below. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple. Alright, well, let's bake some bread. Okay, so while the bread is baking in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and wash a few more dishes. After the bread is baked for about 30 minutes, I'll remove the lid and bake the bread uncovered for another 10 minutes or until it's browned and crusty on top. I tell you what, there's nothing better than fresh baked bread, and my boys are going to be pleasantly surprised when they get home this afternoon. I guess the weatherman was right, y'all. It's raining like crazy out there. Well, y'all, my second loaf of bread is in the oven, so I guess I'll go ahead and start making dinner. Tonight we are having creamy chicken and orzo. According to JoyceApron.com, this one-pot chicken and orzo is a cozy and satisfying easy dinner recipe that combines orzo pasta, chicken, carrots, celery, and onions in a thick chicken broth. It's sort of like chicken noodle soup, and I can't wait to make it. The bread is ready, y'all, and just in time. My boys have just walked in the door from school, and just like I knew they would, they're asking for hot bread right out of the oven, so I'm going to go ahead and cut them a piece. After that, I need to prep the chicken. I'm going to cut the chicken breasts up into bite-sized pieces. I'll then saute the chicken in a little olive oil just until it's no longer pink on the outside. I'll then add the carrots, onions, and celery to the pot with some minced garlic. Alright, well, let's make dinner. Dinner is coming right along, y'all. I added chicken broth and the orzo to the pot with the chicken and veggies, and once it comes to a boil, I'll lower the heat and cover the pot for about 20 minutes, or until the broth has thickened. The creamy chicken and orzo will be ready once the broth is nice and thick and the orzo is no longer chewy. Dinner is ready, y'all, and I can't wait to try it. It looks and smells delicious. I'm going to go ahead and dish up dinner and go sit outside and enjoy the creamy chicken and orzo and fresh baked bread. Later, after dinner, we're going to dig into the cheesecake, and I can't wait to see how it turned out. Wow, y'all, dinner was so good. I'll definitely be making this dish again. It was so warm and cozy, and the bread turned out perfect. Now I'm just going to go ahead and clear the table and get ready for dessert.
Hey.
What?
You got a bigger piece. I might not like it.
I might not like it either. Ready? Mmm.
It's not bad.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's sweet.
What kind of berry is that?
There's strawberries, blueberries, and cherries.
That's not bad.
Very good for my first cheesecake.
It almost tastes like a Cheesecake Factory. Maybe better. How'd you make the sauce?
I use berries and sugar and a little bit of cornstarch.
See, I told you. Mm-hmm. I'll see you later.
Well, y'all, I guess that's about it for another video. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. I hope you all have a great week, and I can't wait to talk to you again real soon. Bye, y'all.